15. Vayimloch David al kol Yisrael. Vayi David oseh mishpat utzedakah lechol amo. And we're asking ourselves, in a chapter that the prophet is writing about the wars of Israel, why is it important to write now that David is doing justice? Do you see where it is? At the end of chapter 8, do you see that? In verse 15, the end of chapter 8, Pasuk Tet Vav, we see that David is doing mishpat utzedakah. Okay? What can we learn from this? So I think Rashi is of those that ask the question. And if you look at source Aleph, you were going to see Rashi here on this pasuk. Rashi says, do you see it? David garam li Yoav. David caused Yoav. Do you remember who Yoav is? Yoav is who, David?
Yoav is the general of David.
The general of David's army. What family relationship is there? Do you remember? Avishai and Yoav are the sons of?
His nephew.
You're right, the sons of Tzeruya. And Tzeruya is the sister of David. So his two leading generals, Yoav and Avishai, are nephews. Rashi brings a midrash and says the following. Follow the Hebrew if you can. You don't have the Hebrew? Why don't you have the Hebrew? Yoav, David garam liOav liot matzliach al hatzava. Who gave the abilities for Yoav to be so successful? David. Why? Lefi she'asa mishpat utzedakah. You hear this? The Torah, the Tanakh tells us, bothers to tell us that, some of you may know that the major role of a king of Israel is not fame, not wealth, but you know what? Justice. That there be good values and that we keep justice. Based on this pasuk, I'm adding something else. Do you know what David would do when a very wealthy man would litigate, sue in court a very poor man? First of all, do you know what the Torah says?
Don't favor the poor because it's poor, and don't favor the
Right. Don't just help out you don't want to insult the wealthy guy. He's such an honorable person, so you're going to let him win the case. No. You know what David would do? In the event that the wealthy guy was right, he would give the psak din as part of the Sanhedrin. He'd give the court order that the poor guy has to pay who? The wealthy guy. And then, you know what David would do? Put his hand in his pocket. There's no money now, I see. And he would go ahead and pay the poor guy. So he would have with what to pay the wealthy guy. That's what's called that David did mishpat utzedakah. You see that in verse 15. Vayi David oseh mishpat utzedakah lechol amo. I'm stopping here in the middle of Rashi to explain the following. David HaMelech, don't think he only did wars for Israel. He provided justice. He was fair. He only joined the Sanhedrin and gave a verdict if the verdict was coming based on testimony. So Rashi says David caused Yoav to be successful in the army. Why? Because you know what David did? Internal policy, David did justice. And that's the major role of a king, to do justice. But he also is a man of chesed. David is a man of chesed and chasidut. He would be acting even saintly, above and beyond. You think he has to pay the poor person money? No. Rashi continues, V'yoav garam le David lasot mishpat utzedakah lefi shehu dan v'yoav shoter. Look, they acted as a team. David is the judge. Yoav is like the police officer. What does Yoav do? He executes the laws of David. V'rodeh al yado. So here we're learning, because David is doing justice, because David is benevolent, he's doing values to the Jewish people, He is influencing Yoav to be successful in war. Okay? Furthermore, ve'od, mitoch sheYoav asak b'milchamot, lo haya David tarud behem v'libo patuch lishpot tzedek. The fact that David has what? Has a general, like who? Yoav. He doesn't have to be involved in wars all the time. He has a general. The king makes sure he has a general. The general goes out to war. So what we can now learn and ask ourselves at the end of this chapter. At the end of this chapter, David is ruling and he's doing justice and charity. That's really the major point of a king, to do justice and charity. That's the major role. Because if there's going to be civil problems and no one will respect the king, the laws of the Torah, how are we going to live? Okay? There's some ridiculous things happening today. Our brothers in the far left, they're very antagonistic. Some of them, only some of them, right? And if a minister goes to speak at Tel Aviv University, he's harassed, and he's not even given the right to speak. That's democracy. That's by far not democracy. That's fascism, shutting up mouths of people. David wouldn't do such a thing. David would judge favorably. And therefore, the end of the chapter of wars, what are we told? David does mishpat, justice, and tzedakah, charity. He would help people out. You know that he's a wealthy person. Okay? Furthermore, we're told about the structure of his government. Okay? He has a secretary. He has very, very big deputies. Like he has high Kohanim, like who? Like Tzadok and Achimelech, we saw in verse 17. And the chapter ended with Benayahu ben Yehoyada. We said ourselves yesterday that Benayahu ben Yehoyada was a sharpshooter. And that's what the Targum, the translation of, who wrote the Targum? Yonatan ben Uziel. He writes in his translation, like Onkelos wrote on the Chumash. So Yonatan ben Uziel writes that the sharpshooter of David's army is this guy, Benayahu ben Yehoyada. So this is part of his structured government. And now, with that in mind, let's go to chapter 9. After we're told about the wars and justice he's doing, David seeks to do more chesed. More chesed. With who? With someone that you would think is his arch enemy. Who was David's arch enemy inside Israel? Shaul. Shaul was his arch enemy. Let's read now chapter 9. Vayomer David. He's speaking to his ministers, okay? And what does he ask? Hachi yesh od asher notar lebeit Shaul ve'aseh imo chesed bavor Yonatan. We all know that David had a very deep connection with Yonatan. Yonatan was willing to give up to be the king as long as David will take it. Now we know that the war on the Gilboa mountain, okay? Who died on that war? Shaul and several sons. It's not clear, were all sons killed or not? Why is he looking for a son of Shaul? He wants to do goodness to anyone that's left over and show that he doesn't have hatred, he doesn't want to do revenge. On the contrary, he wants to do chesed with anyone left over. And why? Why? Do you remember that Yonatan and David, they made a brit. They made an agreement. Look, bevakasha, at letter Gimel, from Shmuel Aleph chapter 20. David Hayes, do you see it? Source Gimel. Velo tachrit et chazdecha mi'em beiti ad olam. You shall not cut off your chesed with my home forever, Yonatan says. Velo ba'achrit Hashem et oivai, David ish me'al penei adama. You see that Yonatan and David made a very special agreement. If I need help, help me. If you need help, I'll help you. David saw the greatness of Yonatan, that at a time when he could have supported his father against David, he didn't support his father. You would have think the most natural, emotional thing to do would support Shaul, but he didn't. He supported David. And Yonatan was a very courageous soldier, minister of the army. He won wars for David as well, and he cared very much for the nation of Israel. David feels obliged to search for a family member of Shaul and try to do chesed with him. All because David swore. You want to learn Masechet Shavuot? He swore to Yonatan, I'm going to help you. I'm going to do chesed with you. Now, what is his major objective? If he can find someone in the family of Yonatan in order that the seed, the family of Yonatan, remain alive. Why do you think David doesn't know what's going on? Doesn't he know the family? His wife is Michal, the daughter of Shaul. Do you know why he doesn't know what's going on? Because they're hiding. Whoever's left over from Shaul, they're hiding in caves. Why do you think they're hiding in caves? They want to be like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai up north in Meron. Why do you think they're hiding?
Somebody is trying to chase them, like the family.
In regular political situations, when a new king takes over and he was contested by the former king, what do the family members of the former king think? Uh-oh, now he's going to do revenge against us. We went out after him. Now is the chance, the turn for David to go out and catch one of the members of the family of Yonatan, Shaul, and so on and so forth. And what are we told? Pasuk Bet. Ulevet Shaul Eved. In the house of Shaul, the family of Shaul, there's a Canaanite servant. Okay, we're talking about a non-Jew that sold himself to the family of Shaul. He's an Eved Kenani. Do you remember what his obligation of mitzvot is?
Like women.
Just like a woman. Whatever mitzvot a Jewish woman is obligated, an Eved Kenani is obligated, which means all the negative mitzvot and all the positive mitzvot that have no time element involved. Eved Kenani. What's his name? Ushmo Tziva. It doesn't sound like a Hebrew name.
What about Shabbat?
Women are obligated in Shabbat as well. Vayikru lo el David. They go find him. The servant. Maybe he knows what's going on. Vayomer HaMelech Elav. Ha'atat Tziva? What's the matter? David doesn't know how to recognize Tziva. I mean, he married the king's daughter. Certainly he knows. So what's he asking? Let me ask you something. What would be the halacha if Tziva was freed? An Eved Kenani, a Canaanite servant that is freed, he would be fully converted into Judaism. He would be obligated all mitzvot.
Only if he wants to, or he had.
That's the purpose why he sold himself as a Canaanite servant, as a process in becoming a Jew.
Oh, he wanted it.
That's what an Eved Kenani is about. Now, so he's asking, are you still Tziva? Meaning, have you been to the Beit Din already? Have you been to the mikveh already? Do you have a new Jewish name? Tziva? That's what some of the commentators explain. And what is the answer? Vayomer Avdecha. I'm still an Eved. I'm still a servant. That's what he answers. Ken? I'm still a servant. Pasuk Gimel, verse 3. Vayomer HaMelech ha'efes od ish leveit Shaul. Is there anyone left over in the house of Shaul? V'aseh imo chesed elokim. I want to do divine kindness with him. Okay? You see here, this chapter is connected so much to the former chapter. David is doing charity. Tzedakah. He's helping out those that are probably hiding and thinking that he's going to kill, that he's going to avenge the blood. No. David is a man of chesed. When you open up Tehillim, Psalms, and you see many psukim, you see the word chesed appear many times. David chesed doesn't have to be with chasidut, saintliness. Certainly they're connected. Chesed, kindness, and chasidut. David, of course, was a chassid, okay? And he did a lot of chesed. And here too, he wants to know, is there anyone alive? Now, do you understand David's understanding? Why grab Tziva? Tziva is the servant of Shaul. Shaul died. He probably knows what's going on in the family. Okay? Vayomer Tziva, look at his response in verse 3. Vayomer Tziva lamelech od bein Leonatan nechei raglayim. Okay? Yes, there is one child left of Yonatan. However, he's handicapped. How is he handicapped? He's what?
He fell.
He fell, and he cannot walk on his 2 feet. Furthermore, it could very well be what David wants to do is take someone who's prominent, someone who's great, and appoint him in a high position of David's kingdom. And that would really open up the eyes of Shaul's family. Again, Shaul, if he has any kids left, grandchildren left, they're probably hiding. And we know where they're hiding, probably on the other side of the Jordan River, as we're going to see, far away.
Oh, so there's other sons besides this.
There could be. He wants to find out. No, but right now we're not dealing with Mordechai Yehudi. We're dealing with a son of Yonatan, and he's handicapped with his 2 feet, meaning he's not an active person. He's not a go-getter. He can't go out, struggle, walk, run. He cannot be a warrior. So what will David do with someone who is handicapped? If he can't be a go-getter, a leader, a warrior, what shall he do? Pasuk Dalet, verse 4, follow the Hebrew. Vayomer lo hamelech eifahu. David asks, where is he? In other words, David is commanding because it says hamelech. Vayomer tziva lamelech, he honors him and he says, Hinehu beit Machir ben Amiel be lo davar. We know that Machir is from the tribe of Menachem. Machir is the tribe of Menachem. Where is Menachem populating themselves? Do you remember? Where is the tribe of Menachem in the land of Israel? 2 places. The north of the Shomron, going down to the valley, going down to the shore, and on the other side of the Jordan River, right? Golanites and other areas. Menachem was given 2 places, okay?
Which ones?
On both sides of the Jordan River, okay? So he's hiding out somewhere with far, far away with the tribe of Menachem, okay? Machir is from the tribe of Menachem, and the place is called Lo Davar. In the Sefer Yoshua, there's a place there called Devir. A place called Devir. So Lo Davar and Devir apparently are the same name. So the Eved spills the beans and says that on the other side of the Jordan River, Yonatan's son has found political asylum, has found a safe place. Okay? If you know where Gesher Naharayim is, there's a bridge that today tourists of Israel cross to go into Jordan. It's right before Tiberia. It's right before the Kinneret. It's called Gesher Naharayim because there are 2 rivers there. So some say this place is about 8 kilometers southeast of Gesher Naharayim. Okay? Now, yes, today it's called Gesher Naharayim. But Gesher Naharayim is not mentioned here. It's a beautiful place. Israeli tourists, what do? They cross to the Jordan by this bridge over here called Gesher Naharayim. Now, Tziva is spilling information, vital information. Yonatan's handicapped son is on the other side. Fine. What does David do? He acts. Pasuk Hey, verse 5. Vayishlach HaMelech David, Vayikacheu mi beit Machir ben Amiel milo davar. Do you think David doesn't have a chariot? He doesn't have a buggy and a wagon? He'll take this. He sends someone, 100 kilometers, Yerushalayim, 150 kilometers to this area. And he's now taking the son the handicapped son of Yonatan from there. Fantastic. Who else comes? Who else comes? What is his name? Pasuk Vav Vayavo Mephibosheth. That's his name. Mephibosheth. Do you think?
From the mouth of embarrassment.
Yeah. Why was he called Mephibosheth? This guy was an amazing scholar. And there were times that he would answer questions above and beyond David answering questions, and he would embarrass David in his great Torah knowledge. Now, David learned many, many years, you can assume, of Torah, and Mephibosheth, in spite of his handicap, there's no really matter here, he is called Mephibosheth ben Yonatan. Okay? And it could be that he was hiding, and now David knows where he is, takes him out of hiding, and now he's being brought to Yerushalayim. Pasuk Vav, Vayavo Mephibosheth ben Yonatan ben Shaul is the grandson. El David, there's like David. It doesn't say a Melech David. Interesting. Maybe it's a sense of great friendship. David was so befriended to Yonatan, and here is Yonatan's name, Mephibosheth, the son of Yonatan, that David is not even called a king here. How does Mephibosheth act when he sees David? Vayipol al panav vayishtachu. What attribute do we see here? It says he falls on his face and he bows down. Humility. He's, standing before the king for the first time in his life, before David, and he is showing tremendous humility, surrendering himself. And now, he says the following, Vayomer David, Mephibosheth, is that you? David didn't have any Facebook pictures of what Mephibosheth looked like. He may have not seen him in years. Vayomer, and he answers, Hine avdecha. Not only physically did he submit himself, but what did he do? He mentally submitted himself. He says, behold, I am your servant. Okay? I am your servant. Okay. Is David happy to have him? Of course. Pasuk Zayin, verse 7, follow the Hebrew. Vayomer lo David, al tira. Why do you think David says the first thing to him, don't be afraid? Maybe David wants to kill him. Maybe that was the matter of summoning him. David wants to avenge whatever troubles Shaul did to David. And then now you understand. They really don't. The family of Shaul did not really in depth understand the greatness of David. Because apparently they're still afraid. They're hiding in caves far, far away in the area of Menachem on the other side of the Jordan. And apparently the leftovers that's alive from the house of Shaul, they're afraid of revenge. They're afraid of revenge. What does David say? Al tira, don't be afraid. Why? In verse 7, Ki aso ese imcha chesed, ba'avur Yonatan avicha, vashivoti lecha, et kol sedei Shaul avicha, ve'ata, tochal lechem al shulchani tamid. Well, that's assuring. What is David offering? Number one, I'm going to do chesed. Why? Because of Yonatan. I'm going to do chesed with you because of your father. Remember, Yonatan died in the war on the Gilboa against the Plishtim, just like Shaul died. But why? And what am I going to give you? Vashivoti lachat kol stei shalom. I'm going to return back into your possession. How shall we call it? The estate, properties of Shaul, your father. Now, how do we understand this? How do we understand? I'm going to give it back to you? Is David allowed to take properties? What is he talking about? Aren't the members of the family the inheritors? What is David offering? I'm going to give back your properties. Now, the Radak has several answers that we should try to understand. Number one, is Mephibosheth an inheritor of the house of Shaul, his grandfather? Of course. Okay? So if he, Mephibosheth, is inheriting from his grandpa the estates of his grandfather, that's called Chesed of David? Ma pitom, that's not Chesed of David. Why? It belongs to the family of Shaul. Okay? Furthermore, do you remember that Shaul, we'll learn later, still has children of the Pilakshim of the concubines, like Ritzpah bat Ayah. Okay? She too should merit to get part of the inheritance. That's one question. If we say that there's a difference, do you remember the action of Achav and Nevayot?
Yeah.
What do you remember?
Achav wanted to buy the field, and he went to.
He took over his vineyard.
Right, and he killed him, murdered him.
So what? How is that right? It wasn't right. So why is David saying I'm doing chesed here? The answer is there are family estates, and there are things that were assumed by the king. Whatever belongs to the family, it's theirs. David is not taking it. But there are things that the king inherited. The king won in wars. Okay? We have to differentiate between the king Shaul and his family estates and whatever the king got in other situations that's not part of his family matters. Okay? This is what David is talking about. I'm going to give you things that I took as king, not the private estates of Shaul. For instance, if we open up Divrei Yamim, we learn that in Giv'on, Shaul and his family were living. Giv'on is right beyond Samuel the prophet's kever, 6 kilometers from here. That was the family estate. That David is not giving him because David couldn't take it. What is David giving over? Things that he took as a king, not the estate of Shaul. And therefore, David wants to show, you know what? I'm going to give you part of what belongs to me. I'm going to give it to you because I took over that from the king. There are things the king can assume that belong to the other king, not family estates, things that are kingly. I took over those things from your father. That was not part of his family plots, family estates. And this is what David is saying. Don't be fearful. I'm going to do chesed. I'm going to give you that estate that I assumed as king. And furthermore, I want you to eat at my table. I want you to eat at my table. Wow. Is that an honor? Of course, it's a great honor. To eat at the table of David every day. He says, Tochal lechem al shulchani tamid. Some of you just might read the pasuk and say, that's all he's offering him? Bread? Do you know that the word bread doesn't have to mean just bread? What does lechem can mean? A meal. A meal. So why is the word lechem used? What do you think? Why does the Tanakh use the word lechem if it's talking about a meal?
Like a holy meal, like
why is lechem used?
Kohanim.
Why is the word lechem used? What?
Very nourishing.
Very nourishing. We start the meal by making a motzi over the bread. So you should know, you're going to eat bread, meaning meals, on my table always. This is the idea of David HaMelech. In other words, David HaMelech is going to say this: I don't want you to have a trouble where you're going to get livelihood. I want you to understand, I'm going to take care of your livelihood. You're going to live by me, and I'm going to support you, and I'm going to give you meals. Wow. Let's see who involves himself now. Pasuk Chet, Vayishtachu. The grandson of Shaul bows down, Mephibosheth. Vayomer me'avdecha. What did I do to deserve to be your servant? Ki fanita lakelev hamet asher kamoni. Okay, Mr. Mephibosheth is saying, I don't deserve this. He's humbling himself. What am I, like a dead dog? I'm nothing. Why should I deserve these matters? He feels awe, fear before David. And now the king wants to make sure these matters are going to be executed. Who do you need to execute these matters? The servant of the house of Shaul. Pasuk Tet. Vaikra Amelech El Tziva. The king now speaks to Tziva, but he calls him Na'ar Shaul. As we learn this chapter, we'll notice that Tziva has a lot of self-confidence. He has a lot of power. We're going to see in a moment as well. David wants to put him down. You're only a Na'ar. You're only like a young lad. Okay? Vayomer 11, David says to the servant, Kol asher haya l'Shaul l'cho beito, whatever belonged to Shaul and his household, natati leben adonecha. Don't think you're going to get it. I'm giving it to the son of your master. Your master was Shaul and Yonatan, and now I'm going to give it to Mephibosheth. Furthermore, verse 10, V'avadet lo et adama. You, the servant, you're going to be tilling the fields. You're going to be cultivating the fields. Ata uvanecha vavadecha. David knows that Tziva is a wealthy servant. He has sons. He has a working corporation. He has a lot of things. Ata uvanecha vavadecha veveita. You're going to bring them. Vaya leven adonecha lechem v'chalo. Mr. Mephibosheth, he's going to get bread and eat. Umephibosheth ben adonecha yochal tamid lechem hashulchani. What does the Tanakh tell us in the middle of David giving an order to Tziva? Look at the end of the pasuk of 10. Uletziva chamisha asar banim v'esrim avadim. We see that Tziva is a wealthy person. He has a corporation of 20 workers. He has 10 kids. He has a big workforce. He's a wealthy man. You might have thought that who's putting his eyes on the wealth of Shaul, Tziva, but David doesn't want to allow such a thing whatsoever. Okay? Not so whatsoever. Pasuk Yud Bet. Yud Aleph, I'm sorry.
So what did he do? David HaMelech is saying Tziva is just a slave?
Tziva, you have to fulfill your job as a slave and make sure to execute that this man called Mephibosheth, the grandson of Shaul, the son of Yonatan, is going to be on my table every day. And you're going to cultivate his fields, and you're going to make him rich, and he's going to be happy, and so on and so forth. Okay? Look, I assume, or we can assume, and the Malbim Rav Ariel brings it. What do you think financially has been happening? What do you think has been happening financially to the son of Yonatan? He probably has no money. He's hiding out. He's probably very poor, very destitute. And David wants to stand him up on his feet financially. He wants to do chesed with this. Okay? He wants to. Now, it could very well be that his uncles and others went up against David. David is saying, I'm cleaning the slate. Everyone is pardoned. I'm not interested in doing anything bad to anyone. Everyone's getting like a pardoning. David doesn't want to commit violence. He doesn't want to commit a case of what? A case of vengeance. He's not interested in vengeance whatsoever. Okay? What is he interested in? Doing chesed. And he's really chasidut. David could have left all this wealth by himself. Pasuk Yud Aleph. What does Tziva say now? Verse 11. Vayomer Tziva lamelech kechol asher yitzaveh Adoni hamelech et avdo. Whatever you command, he's talking to him in third person. Kein yaseh avdecha. Okay? That's what your servant is going to do. Umefivoshet ochel al shulchani ke'achad mibnei hamelech. Now there are those that explain the ending of this pasuk here, when David is trying to what? Do chesed with Mephibosheth. Here the servant says, no, he'll eat on my table. Okay? Why? Apparently Tziva has been accustomed to calling the decisions, making the shots. He's been managing all the matters as if he was an entrepreneur, a businessman, as if he's a free man. Okay? But right now we see that he's taking honor. And Mephibosheth will eat on my table. It's okay. He doesn't have to eat on your table, David. In other words, tziva, and this is ga'ava, this is pride, haughtiness. He's turning himself from being a servant to doing chesed with others. Who asked him? Who asked him? Okay? Tziva, we see here, is a strong element in the household of Shaul. And right now, what does Mephibosheth do? On the one hand, he's invited to the king to eat at his table, but Tziva, no, it's okay. He'll eat on my table. So what does Mephibosheth do? Tziva is a tough personality here. Right now, Mephibosheth is in between two personalities, David and Tziva. And Mephibosheth, obviously, is being revealed here as a very passive person. Look at Pasuk Yud Bet, verse 12. V'le Mephibosheth ben Katan. He has a son. Ushmo Micha. His name is Micha. V'chol Moshav Beit Tziva vadim Mephibosheth. But all the house of Tziva are servants to Mephibosheth. We're not, in other words, the house of Beit Tziva, he has sons and servants. So we see here that Mephibosheth is a weak man. He doesn't do anything with his sons and servants. Furthermore, the end of the chapter, Mephibosheth Yoshev B'Yerushalayim. The word Yoshev doesn't only denote physically he's sitting, but rather he's inactive. He's not a go-getter. He's Yoshev B'Yerushalayim. Ki al Shulchan HaMelech Tamid O Chabari. He does eat on the king's table. He doesn't have a choice. You can't go up against the king. V'hu piseach shtei raglav. Now we know how handicapped he is. He's very handicapped. So what we see here is that the chesed, the kindness of David, is a type of all the time kindness. At the end of the last chapter, he's doing tzedakah and mishpat and tzedakah. Here too, he wants to do kindness with Mephibosheth. He gives over the estate that he could have kept for himself. But this is what he's doing. And now we have to see what is the next step that David will do. And that we'll learn tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem.